and more. Visit KernBusinessJournal.com to find out how to subscribe or where to pick up a free copy. To inquire about advertising in the Bi-Monthly Business Journal, call 395-7586. Find us online on Facebook and Twitter, as well as on KernBusinessJournal.com. Introducing TBC Mobile from the Bakersfield Californian. The most complete news, sports, weather, video, opinion, and lifestyle coverage in Bakersfield and Kern County. It's the easiest way to stay up to date on all things local while on the go. Read it on your smartphone or tablet. Download now by searching Bakersfield Californian in the Apple, Google, and Amazon app stores.
From the Dignity Health Studio at the Bakersfield Californian, this is Strictly Business, presented by the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Sponsored in part by the law offices of Young Wooldridge, San Joaquin Community Hospital, Hydrogen Energy California, and Chevron. And now, here's your host, Cindy Pollard, President and CEO of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today on this Monday, February 3rd. And if you're a Broncos fan, you're probably not so happy to see the day dawn. If you're a Seahawks fan, go Hawks. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be joined by Julian Herrera from Continental Labor and Staffing Resources to talk about recruiting the best and the brightest. And then a little bit later in the show, Attorney Jerry Pearson from the law offices of Young Wooldridge will be here to discuss some of the new labor laws that went into effect January 1st and what they mean to you, what you need to do to stay in compliance. But first, let's take a look at some news that you can use. If you're an employer that had 11 or more employees in 2013, you're required to post the Cal OSHA Form 300A from February 1st through April 30th. This annual summary log of injuries and illnesses reports the incidents that occurred in your workplace in 2013 and is designed to alert workers to hazards that may exist in the workplace. Even if your company had no recordable injuries or illnesses in the calendar year, you must still post a summary with zeros in the total line. This summary must be posted in a conspicuous place where you normally post your notices to employees. Employers must also make a copy of the summary available to employees who move from work site to work site and for those employees who do not report to any fixed establishment on a regular basis. If you operate a school, this requirement does not apply to you. And it is IRS tax filing season. It has officially opened, and the IRS has produced a special series of daily tax tips to help you prepare your tax returns. Many of those tips offer information on money-saving tax credits and deductions that can be easy to overlook and could affect your refund. Topics that will be covered in the daily tax tips include the fastest and safest way to get your refund, some common tax return errors that could slow down your refund. They'll provide information on the home office deduction as well as education tax credits. If you're interested in receiving the daily tax tips via email, you can sign up for this free service on irs.gov. From the subscriptions page, choose the tax tips drop-down menu and then click on subscribe, and they'll arrive in your email inbox every day. U.S. employers added 74,000 jobs in December, a sharp drop from the 241,000 jobs gained in November, and the smallest figure in almost 3 years. California's unemployment rate currently stands at 8.5%, according to the Employment Development Department, and in the 12 months that ended last November, non-farm payroll rose 1.6% to 226,000. Economists predict that California will continue to outpace the U.S. for job growth, as California traditionally grabs about 10% of the total job gains for the nation. Health care and construction sectors and the financial services industries are going to continue to bleed jobs for a little longer as fewer homeowners look to refinance their homes. The mortgage industry will also see some job losses. A lawsuit challenging teacher tenure and seniority protections went to court last week. The Trinity of Teachers' Rights in California, tenure, seniority, and due process and dismissals is under attack in a trial in Los Angeles with statewide impact and national interest. In Vergara versus California, Students Matter, a nonprofit organization, is suing the state to overturn 5 statutes in the Education Code on behalf of Beatriz Vergara, a Los Angeles Unified student who was 13 when the lawsuit was filed in 2012, and 8 more students in 5 districts. The trial is expected to run at least a month, perhaps longer, in Superior Court in Los Angeles, but will likely end up in the Supreme Court. Vergara versus California asserts that the outdated tenure, dismissal, and layoff statutes violates children's fundamental right to an equal education under the state constitution. The laws disproportionately affect minority and low-income schools, the lawsuit asserts, because they have a disproportionately larger share of ineffective teachers. Thus, the laws at issue perpetuate and widen the very achievement gap that education itself is supposed to eliminate, says Students Matter. The Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce signed on in support of Students Matter on this lawsuit last year, and we're going to continue to watch the case because of the impact and the correlation between education and the workforce. Research by the Economic Policy Institute finds that low-wage workers are better educated today than they were in 1968, but they earn less money when adjusting the minimum wage for inflation. The U.S. Census Bureau's current population survey finds that 79% of low-wage workers had a high school degree in 2012, compared with less than half in 1968. The federal minimum wage, however, was 23% lower in 2012 when adjusted for inflation, compared with 1968, researchers said. According to the Economic Policy Institute, when adjusted, the 1968 federal minimum wage would be $9.40 an hour in today's dollars. The current federal minimum wage, of course, is $7.25 an hour. Researchers compared the bottom 20% of wage earnings in the population survey from 1968 to 2012 and found that the education levels had improved and average age had risen as well. The group is urging Congress to raise the federal minimum wage, and President Obama has called on Congress to raise the minimum wage, but opposition is strong from business groups and who argue that a steep hike would hurt small businesses and slow the rate of job growth. California, as you know, has already taken steps to raise its minimum wage. The current rate of $8 an hour will increase to $9 an hour by July of this year and to $10 an hour by January of 2016, well above the current federal minimum wage. The impact that it has on business remains to be seen. Water has been in the news a lot lately, and that news has not been good. Following much urging, Governor Brown declared a drought emergency, and then 2 weeks ago, our Valley Congressman, David Valadao, Kevin McCarthy, and Devin Nunes introduced emergency legislation to address the devastating water shortages in California. Congressman Valadao stopped by the studio last week to talk about the citrus greening, and I had a chance to ask him about the emergency legislation. Here's what he had to say.
Tough times call for some tough measures.
Well, I don't know if, I'm sure most of your viewers have been paying attention to the news. The drought's been a pretty bad situation for the Valley. So what we've been working on right now is a piece of legislation that works with, obviously, the governor's announcement of the drought declaration. The legislation that we're working on should be introduced really soon. And now with the speaker's support saying that it'll be on the floor within a few weeks.
Oh, that's great.
He actually said 2 weeks.
So what's included in this particular piece of legislation?
So it's a 3-part bill. Basically, the first most important part is the Joint Committee. The Joint Committee is an open process where we'll have hearings amongst members so that we can negotiate this. The problem that we've had in the past is we haven't had a lot of cooperation in Washington with this issue, so this will force us to the table and make it a public debate.
And this is a bipartisan
It will be
piece.
bipartisan in both houses. So the Senate will have 5 and the House will have 5. So there will be 5 from each side, and obviously the majority party will have 3, and the minority party will have 2 in their respective houses, so for a total of 10 members. And we'll go through the process on that side and come up with some type of report on what our solutions are. The next 2 parts that are really important, one has to do with the pumps. Obviously the pump's not pumping water for the valley here is a huge problem. Right here in Kern County, we're at 5% water allocation. In parts of Fresno and Kings County, we're looking at 0%.
Zero, right, I saw that.
So what this does is we go back to not the San Joaquin River Settlement, but the Bay Delta Accord. That was negotiated in the mid-90s, and it was an agreement between environmentalists and electeds at that time to allow the pumps to run a certain amount of time. It doesn't say turn on the pumps and run the Delta dry, but if we do get some rain and there is some water available, instead of letting it go out into the ocean like the 800,000 acre feet that's already gone out, we would pump that, put it in our reservoirs, and use it for times like we today.
Right.
The third portion has to do with the San Joaquin River Settlement. River Settlement was negotiated some years ago, and water is going out to the San Joaquin River. San Joaquin River is not prepared to take all this water. And so we've got these releases going on. They're causing some problems for locals along the San Joaquin River.
Right.
And that water is needed on the east side of the valley, and it affects Orange Cove. It affects all the way down into Kern County on the Kern-Frank Canal. So that legislation covers all three of those. It's a short-term deal because the two provisions to pump water and to let water come to the south, both of those provisions do have a sunset clause in there. So it's not a forever deal. And then the Joint Committee will have the long-term solution.
So are you optimistic?
You know, having the speaker come to the Valley this week was obviously really good. And having the speaker actually say that we will have this legislation on the floor in 2 weeks is a very good sign.
Well, we hope that you're successful, and thank you for what you do.
Well, we're doing our best, and we'll continue to do it.
That emergency drought bill, now called the Sacramento-San Joaquin Valley Emergency Water Delivery Act, H.R. 3964, codifies the Bay Delta Accord and reforms the Central Valley Project Improvement Act and the Endangered Species Act that have severely curtailed water deliveries and resulted in hundreds of billions of gallons of badly needed water here in the valley being run into the ocean. H.R. 3964 has been scheduled for debate in the full House later this week, February 5th, actually. In the meantime, the California Department of Water Resources announced late last week that water agencies should expect a big fat zero in terms of their allocation of state water project supplies as a result of the record dry conditions and low storage levels. The Kern County Water Agency calls the 0% allocation catastrophic and woefully inadequate for Kern County residents, farms, and businesses. Joining me here in the studio is Ben McFarland, who is the Executive Director of the Kern County Farm Bureau. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Happy to be here.
Now, first, what are local farmers expecting if H.R. 3964 does pass?
Well, the good thing about this bill is it has a long-term solution and a short-term solution. The unfortunate matter is that the only magic wand out there is more water, as told by what we have, a 12% snowpack right now. So obviously we want to see something get done, and we commend our congressional representatives for making that happen. That's more than the Senate has done. And so we're just waiting to see what's going to happen, and obviously this new news isn't good for our local economy.
Right. So if the bill does pass, how soon will our farmers begin to see some type of relief?
Well, it depends on what water district you're in, because not every grower is on state water project or federal water project. But I think some of the short-term solutions that you'll see is some of the improvements that they're going to make to the Central Valley project you'll see immediately. Some of the longer-term stuff with the Bay Delta Accord is going to take a little bit more time.
And what happens, heaven forbid, if it doesn't pass?
Well, Cindy, I think it's important for your listeners to understand that we're getting squeezed from both angles here. We're not only getting the surface water that we pay for 100%, but we're also being told that we have to reduce the amount of water we're taking out of the ground. So if this trend continues to happen, we're going to see more fallowed acres, less income for our Kern County economy.
Wow. So hopefully we don't get to the point where we see the fallowed acres. But in the meantime, what happens, what does the 0% allocation mean to the farmers? And I use that not all of them, rely on that water, but.
Well, I mean, it's going to have to come down to a business decision. I mean, a diversified farmer has a plethora of different commodities that he's growing, but you're going to have to feed the permanent crops first. And that means you're going to have to let go of some of the conventional open ground commodities that we've typically grown.
Well, we're going to hope that it does pass and that we don't see it get any worse than what it is.
I think the big issue here is, we want to see it pass House of Representatives, but we need firm action from the executive branch and also the U.S. Senate to get something done. Again, we commend our congressional representatives for making this happen. Now let's see both parties get involved and come towards a solution.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Ben.
Anytime.
You're watching Strictly Business. I'm Cindy Pollard with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to be talking to Julian Herrera with Continental Labor and Staffing Resources, who's going to give you tips on hiring the best and the brightest.
Business exposure.
Connections with other businesses.
You want to make a difference in the community?
Credibility of membership.
Civic responsibility.
Business advocacy.
Leads generation.
Various benefits and services.
Seminars and workshops.
Participate on chamber committees.
And you can have it all with your membership in the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
When a stroke or heart attack strikes, what's your plan? The Emergency Center at San Joaquin Community Hospital stands at the ready with nationally recognized stroke and heart care when seconds count. When you get home tonight, I want you to tell your loved one if you're having a stroke or a heart attack, you want to be taken to San Joaquin Community Hospital. In fact, more people in Kern County come to San Joaquin Community Hospital than any other emergency room in the area. So, if a stroke or heart attack strikes, make a plan. Come to the Emergency Center at San Joaquin Community Hospital.
In today's world, you need help protecting what's important. Whether your family, your home, your business, or even your assets, Young Wooldridge is your trusted partner and advocate. For more than 70 years, the attorneys at Young Wooldridge have worked steadily, tirelessly, and faithfully, whether you're building your business or rebuilding your life. The law offices at Young Wooldridge. Our lights are always on, so when you need us, we'll be there for you.
This is Strictly Business, presented by the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Sponsored in part by the law offices of Young Wooldridge, San Joaquin Community Hospital, Hydrogen Energy California, and Chevron. And now, here's your host, Cindy Pollard, President and CEO of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
Welcome back. Hiring the right person is not always easy, and hiring the wrong person could have huge, devastating impacts to your company. Waste of time, waste of money, and really a blow to the morale. Julian Herrera, Business Development Manager for Continental Labor and Staffing Resources, is here to talk about how you can avoid the pitfalls and get straight to the best and the brightest. Welcome.
Good morning, Cindy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How important is it to make the right hiring choice?
Like you said, it's a huge deal. It can be extremely expensive to hire the wrong person when you start investing time, training, and all of that great stuff. They could be a big detriment to the morale of your team if they're the wrong fit. And then if it doesn't work out, you're back to the drawing board to start all over again. And as you know, business owners, time is money. And so any wasted time in that hiring process is really challenging for them. And people are a key asset to any business. So making a right hire is extremely important.
What does it cost on average to have to replace an employee?
There's different statistics out there, but I know that if you think about just in lost time, the expense of having to run an ad and recruit all over again, training time, as I said, it could be extremely costly. And again, it starts all over again when you go to hire someone else.
That's right, up into the thousands of dollars and more.
Yes.
Now, how important are reference checks during the interview process? I know it's the part of the process that for me, it's like watching paint dry. You've gone through the process, you've done the interview, you just want to get it done and get to work. But references are pretty important.
References are pretty important, and a lot of businesses and hiring managers won't use it because there's a lot of restrictions as far as what you can ask and what you can't ask. But in our experience, we find it extremely important. Previous employers, their ability to say whether they'd rehire somebody, just that answer alone, which they're allowed to say, is extremely important and can be very valuable. Every application asks for references, but I think very few hiring managers take the time to do it. In our experience, it's been a tremendous value to have that information.
What are I won't ask you that. You can say, what are some of the things that might show up? But no, I won't ask you that. We'll just let those hiring managers
they all know.
Run into that.
Right.
Tell us now there are active job seekers out there.
Right.
and there are passive job seekers. What is a passive job seeker?
It's a phenomenon that's been growing and has a name put to it now over the last few years. And what it is we believe that any company who's hiring right now, your next best hire is working somewhere else. They're not at home waiting. They're not sitting and waiting for your phone call or to see your ad. They are working, but maybe not happily. Maybe they're in a job because they need it. They're going to stay there because of the financial realities of holding on to that job.
And it's convenient.
But maybe they're not in their true calling, and they would be open to an opportunity if you reached out and showed them that opportunity. So whatever your hiring strategy is, it's got to include the idea that, hey, they're working somewhere else. How can I attract them? How can I show them that the opportunity with my company is where they really want to be? And so those passive job seekers are truly your next best hire. I spoke to a client of mine on Friday. I said, your next best hire is probably working for your competitor. So how are you going to seek out and find that person and show them that your company is really where they want to be?
So how do you do that?
There's a multiple of strategies to use. One of the things that we really recommend to our clients is having a social media and branding strategy where passive job seeker can find you, hear about your company, know that you have some opportunities to grow there. Have LinkedIn, Facebook, different social media strategies for people can find out about your company. You should always be hiring. Hiring managers should always have that help wanted sign hanging to find talent because when they're looking, it may not be convenient, but it's really important to you to really seek them out and talk to them when they're open to that. So.
Okay. Yeah. So when do you actually recruit? And what does that look like?
I think you're always recruiting.
Okay.
My recommendation is that you're always willing to talk to somebody. If you've got somebody with quality talent and they're looking, good companies are going to make room for that person. So I think you're constantly recruiting and maybe not actively, maybe not actually offering employment, but at the very least developing a database of good talent.
Okay.
Having a list of folks that you have spoken to and that you're willing to consider so that when that opportunity, when the job opening does come up, then you definitely can pull the trigger because you have access to a database of good, talented people that you know are looking.
Okay. Now, you mentioned social media just a couple of minutes ago. How can that help you with your recruiting, and what are you seeing employers using to find the best?
One way is having just your brand, your company brand out there. When you're hiring the best, when you're looking for the best talent, they're vetting you just as much as you're trying to vet them. So any way you can brand yourself and show that you're a good company to work for, things like locally owned. That's a big deal here in Kern County. Local decision makers founded here, family-oriented business. You speak to folks, I like to call Air Energy here locally. They're the Google of Bakersfield. They've got some phenomenal things like fitness programs and different things they do. However you can to brand that about your company, I think, is the way to use social media. That's a great platform to do that with. A lot of companies are creating a LinkedIn profile that people can follow. People are posting different things that their company's doing when it comes to their philanthropy and those types of activities on their Facebook page. People are really engaged by that. So anything you can do to constantly have a brand out there to attract talent, they will be attracted to good companies. So as long as you're putting that message out there, I don't think it'll help.
Okay. So you're talking about it from the perspective of using social media to brand and position your company.
Right.
What about using it as a recruitment tool itself?
Absolutely. We post all of our jobs via our Facebook page, via social media, via LinkedIn. Hiring managers are using social media to go after profiles and find people. Again, kind of going back to the whole passive job seekers idea, the good hiring managers know that. So they're trolling through your Facebook profile, your LinkedIn page, and finding if they're attracted to something about you, they're going to reach out and do that. So hiring managers out there definitely use the LinkedIn and those things to find good quality, talented people.
And speaking of social media and the Facebook, make sure that your Facebook profile actually communicates what you want it to communicate.
It's a great idea, and I know you're going to have some legal advice later, and then the rules with that are changing. But definitely, if you're a job seeker, someone's
watch your
look
profile.
At it. Someone's looking at it for sure.
Right. So, during an interview, you've got character questions, and then you've got skill questions. And skill is it's probably the easiest to identify.
Right.
Plus, there are ways that you can test for skills. What are character types of questions, and how do you balance the character versus the skill or the technical question?
That's a great question. the feedback we get when a hire doesn't work is generally not because they didn't have the skill set. It's something that can be trained if an employee is coachable enough. Really, when a hire doesn't work is more character, personality.
They weren't a fit.
They weren't a fit. And that's such an elusive word, but that's exactly what it is. If they're not a good fit, if they don't have the character traits that mesh with that company, it's not going to work. So we always recommend implementing some of those what if questions, put people in a scenario and ask them how they would handle that situation. Maybe ask questions related to what their goals are, where they see themselves. Do they enjoy working independently? Do they really like a group? If you have someone who's extremely outgoing and talks with their hands like I do, that's not a person you're necessarily going to put in a cubicle by themselves and work just them and the computer all day. It just wouldn't work. So really taking time to invest effort in your questions to ferret out some of that more character-related soft skills, I guess is a good way to put it, to find out those character things, because you want to make sure it's a fit just as much as the skill set is.
Okay. And how, you mentioned earlier how a lot of companies are using social media to, to create their brand or to at least put their brand on display for job seekers. Right. How does a company's culture play into hiring their top talent?
I think it plays a great deal. I think just as much as we talked about social media being used for a hiring management company to find good people, as soon as a job posting goes up, those job seekers are going on to your company's website. They're wanting to learn just as much about you as possible. So they're vetting those companies as well. So yeah, creating a company culture that's positive and attract people. And it's not being all things to all people. It's just being really genuine. If our company really believes in philanthropy, and there's certain things that we're really big on. So applicants will kind of be attracted to us because they believe the same thing. So it's not about being different or but just being genuine, and the top talent will find you as well.
That's great. And how important are a company's employees in the recruitment process?
A lot of companies reach out to their employees and give them some sort of incentive to refer their friends. If I'm a happy employee, and I think this is a company, of course I'm going to talk to my friends and say, hey, you should be a part of this team. So companies recognize that, they reach out. The other area of hiring the best talent that we recommend is in the realm of cross-training. Your best employee for that position may already be in your company, just in a different department.
Good point.
So sometimes looking internally is a good way to do that too.
Great point. Yeah. Julian, those are some absolutely fantastic tips. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Cindy. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. You're watching Strictly Business. I'm Cindy Pollard with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Attorney Jerry Pearson with the Law Offices of Young Wooldridge to talk about some of those 40 new laws that took effect January 1st of this year and what you and your company can do to stay in compliance.
Business exposure.
Connections with other businesses.
You want to make a difference in the community?
Credibility of membership.
Civic responsibility.
Business advocacy.
Leads generation.
Various benefits and services.
Seminars and workshops.
Participate on chamber committees.
And you can have it all with your membership in the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
Kern Business Journal contains news and information from local business leaders and organizations. Topics include agriculture, health and medical, energy, real estate, and more. Visit KernBusinessJournal.com to find out how to subscribe or where to pick up a free copy. To inquire about advertising in the bi-monthly Business Journal, call 395-7586. Find us online on Facebook and Twitter, as well as on KernBusinessJournal.com.
Hydrogen Energy California, a clean and reliable alternative energy solution, is proud to sponsor this program. Located in western Kern County, HECO will create thousands of construction jobs and at least 200 full-time positions. That translates into $52 million in annual labor income and at least $239 million in annual economic impact to Kern County. To learn more about HECO's commitment to the vitality of our business community, visit hydrogenenergycalifornia.com.
This is Strictly Business, presented by the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Sponsored in part by the Law Offices of Young Wooldridge, San Joaquin Community Hospital, Hydrogen Energy California, and Chevron. And now, here's your host, Cindy Pollard, President and CEO of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. This Spotlight on Employment Laws is brought to you by the law offices of Young Wooldridge. And we're joined here in the studio by attorney Jerry Pearson to discuss some of the new employment laws for 2014. Jerry is a partner with Young Wooldridge, where he serves as head of the business department. He specializes in representing management in labor and employment issues and making sure that his clients stay in compliance with state and federal laws. Jerry has successfully defended Kern County employers in wage and hour matters, as well as cases alleging harassment, discrimination, wrongful termination, and other labor-related issues. In 2013, Jerry served as president of the Kern County Society for Human Resources Management. Good morning.
Morning, Cindy.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
So, January 1st brought 40, well, it brought a lot of laws, but 40 of those new laws were employment-related laws. What are the hot-button issues for employment law for 2014?
Well, no matter how many new laws are out there, the things that I see happening in employment law, that what I like to do is talk about, what telephone calls do I get, right?
Okay.
What calls do I get from my clients? What do I see happening out there? The one big hot button issue that I continually see happening is this strange battle in the world of privacy.
Oh,
okay.
Tell us about that.
With the advent of the internet, computer use, technology use, there's a strange phenomenon going out there with employees and employers, and it's employers continually getting sued for violating employees' privacy rights in various ways, and yet employees on the other end continually giving up their privacy rights wittingly, unwittingly, and it's this strange yin-yang that's happening more and more each year, and it's a strange phenomenon that I see happening more and more every day, every year.
Wow. Well, I know our policy talks about, the use of the internet and the computers and phones and all of that, and the fact that it's, company property,
right.
and that, anything that is done on the company devices, is subject to being monitored. Does that protect an employer, or?
It can. It does.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that's in 2014. That's an absolute must.
Okay.
An employer has to have that. And it has to say certain things. If an employer in 2014, whether it has 5 employees or whether it has 5,000 employees, if they don't have those types of policies, and if they don't say certain things, an employer is in the dark, almost in the dark ages. They have their head in the sand.
Wow.
And one of the problems with this area of the law, technology use, it's expanding and advancing at a rapid pace. You've got to continually update it. And I remember a few years ago, my technology policy basically said fax machines, pagers, right? And see, you're laughing.
Right.
My client's laughing.
I had a pager.
My client's laughing at me when I say those things now. I still have them in the policies because you never know who's going to have one.
Right.
But, how do I update it now? I talk to my kids, right?
Good point.
What are you using? What's on? They're telling me new things every day. Snapchat, FaceTime, and those are probably out of date now. But you got to continually update those things to keep up with the technology. It's booming.
So why is it so important for employers to be so vigilant in protecting their own private information? I'm sure you've seen some horror stories out there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most common phone calls that I get or cases that I get on my desk is an employer who says, somebody exposed my trade secrets, somebody exposed my confidential information. And the reason why they have to be so vigilant is because, as we've been talking about, it's so much easier now for that information to get out there.
Right.
It's easy for an employee to expose a client's or an employer's confidential information. And it might be you have an employee who has an axe to grind with you, and they do it as they go out the door, or you might have a totally innocent employee who doesn't realize what they're doing, okay? And it's so easy, we all have the cell phone now that has a camera on it, right? So I have clients who work on a third parties, a vendors, or one of their clients' property, okay? And so they have to protect not only their own confidential information, but the property and confidential information of their clients.
Oh.
So you got to protect that from your employees who are out there with a cell phone camera, snapping photos of a contract, of a recipe, of what your property looks like, pricing information, credit card information, because that stuff can easily be photographed, put on Facebook.
And that's all competitive.
That is, yeah,
competitive
absolutely.
information.
So it's so much easier now to get out there and expose to the entire world than we never thought about it 5 years ago.
Wow.
Now it can be done in just an instant.
Now, I know of 2 instances where companies have terminated employees based on their technology use.
Okay.
What can employers do and not do in terms of tracking employee usage of technology?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. And what employers can do is they can track an employee's computer use at work. They can also track an employee's social media use. What is social media? Facebook, MySpace, if people still use that, Instagram, those sorts of things, and whatever else might be out there today. But they have to be careful in how they do it. As we talked earlier, they have to have a written policy. Okay, so if I have an employer who calls me and says, I heard last night that my employee posted something bad about me on Facebook, I want to fire them. My first question is, do you have a policy that says you're going to track that? No, I don't. You can't do that.
Not so fast.
Yeah, let's back up for a minute.
Yeah.
So you have to have a written policy that says you're going to do these things, and that policy has to be in writing, and your employees have to have knowledge of that before you take this action. If you have that policy, then it has to be legal. You can't just have a blanket statement saying you can't use social media. That's not legal. Okay, there's case law that says what you can and can't do as an employer. You can't just tell them you can't post on Facebook about our business. That's actually protected speech. Okay,
Yeah. Freedom of speech is what we have.
right. So there are some things you can do, some things you can't do, and you have to. The important thing is, if you're going to track employees' technology use, you have to tell them that they have no expectation of privacy when they get into your office and plug onto your computers and use your internet hookup.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier a couple of ways that trade secrets can be exposed, you know, through cell phones and, pictures that are being taken. How can an employer protect trade secrets or confidential information?
Yeah, well, getting back to what I said earlier, it's becoming more difficult in this day and age. You used to be able to lock them up in a safe, right?
Right.
Again, I'm pounding the thought of having written policies. It's a must. Okay, if you don't have written policies about these things, it's almost impossible to protect them. So, you must have written policies about confidential information and trade secrets. Okay, and then I would tie them into the technology policies we talked about. When you have your technology policies about internet use, what you can and can't do on the computer, and social media. Tie those policies in together. Tell them when you use the internet policy, you can't use that to expose your trade secrets. In your confidential information and trade secrets policies, make sure you clearly define what confidential information is. Clearly define what trade secrets are. I've seen a lot of confidential information and trade secrets policies where a client calls me and says, this employee or former employee exposed my trade secrets. I say, do you have a confidential information policy? Yes, I do. Let me see it. And it says, you can't expose confidential information. What's that?
What is that?
So clearly define what it is.
Client list, pricing information, you have to spell all of that out.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's pretty useless. So clearly define what those things are. Have your employees sign it. Go a step further. Have them sign those policies. Have them sign those agreements. And that will further to help protect you.
Okay. Now, a lot of companies have employees who use company vehicles as a part of their everyday business. Are there any restrictions that are placed on them? I've read where some companies are using GPS to track, What's the limit before an employer is breaking privacy laws on something like that?
Sure. That's an excellent question, because this is, again, one of these calls where I get a client who says, I want to terminate my employee because I found out instead of going to the job site, they went to the bar or to the girlfriend's house.
Oh, not good.
Happens. Yeah, it happens. And the use of GPS is becoming more and more prominent. And you can use GPS on company vehicles, okay? But surprisingly, even though it's your vehicle, you've got to let employees know that you're putting it on their vehicle.
Okay.
So, like with the computer use, you have a right to track an employee's use in your company vehicle by GPS, but if you're going to do it, you got to tell them.
Okay.
You have to put it in writing. You have to have a policy that says, I'm putting this tracking device on your vehicle and I'm going to track your use of it whenever you're going to do it. Okay, if you're just going to do it during business hours or whatever. And I don't care if they read it or not, but you got to put it in writing.
Right.
Okay. If you don't do that, an employee can make an argument, and they have in court cases saying, I didn't know that, you invaded my privacy, I have an expectation of privacy in that vehicle, and you could be up a creek. So I encourage employers to use GPS in their vehicles, but put it in writing, notify your employees you're going to do it, and then you can track them. If you're going to track employees' vehicle use, be careful if you have employees that take those vehicles home and use it during off hours. If you allow your employees to use your company vehicles for personal use, be very careful if you're going to track their vehicle use during personal time.
Okay.
You might get information you don't want and that you're not entitled to.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, you mentioned, and we have about 1 minute to wrap here, but you talked about, some employees who are using company cars and they might stop by a bar.
Yeah.
That brings me to the question of drug testing. Are there restrictions or limits to employee drug testing, and when should an employer consider?
Yes, there are limits. A lot of lawsuits about evasion and privacy and drug testing. If you're going to do drug testing, be very careful with it. I do encourage it, but know what you're doing and how you're doing it. The times you can drug test: pre-employment, reasonable suspicion, post-accident, and random testing. Don't just call and say, I want to test John today. Well, why do you want to test John? You better have a reasonable suspicion, or you better just be able to random test people. If you're going to random test people, make sure you have a facility that knows what they're doing in terms of random testing. It better be really random testing. Don't just say, hey, I want to test you today. Can't do that. So be careful with drug testing. Have a written policy, again, in place first, and use a facility that knows what they're doing. It better be pure random testing.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
As Jerry Pearson said, it's very important to have it in writing and to make sure that your employees are aware of it. You're watching Strictly Business. I'm Cindy Pollard. We're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors, and when we return, we'll be at the closing bell with upcoming events, activities for your business.
Business exposure.
Connections with other businesses.
You want to make a difference in the community?
Credibility of membership.
Civic responsibility.
Business advocacy.
Leads generation.
Various benefits and services.
Seminars and workshops.
Participate on chamber committees.
And you can have it all with your membership in the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
Introducing TBC Mobile from the Bakersfield, California. The most complete news, sports, weather, video, opinion, and lifestyle coverage in Bakersfield and Kern County. It's the easiest way to stay up to date on all things local while on the go. Read it on your smartphone or tablet. Download now by searching Bakersfield Californian in the Apple, Google, and Amazon app stores.
This is an RC robotic claw.
A high school science teacher made me what I am today.
Our science teacher helped us build it.
Now I'm a geologist at Chevron, and I get to help science teachers.
It has 4 servo motors and a wireless microcontroller.
Over the last 3 years, we've put nearly $100 million into American education. That's thousands of kids learning to love science.
Isn't that cool?
That's pretty cool.
This is Strictly Business, presented by the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Sponsored in part by the law offices of Young Wooldridge, San Joaquin Community Hospital, Hydrogen Energy California, and Chevron. And now, here's your host, Cindy Pollard, President and CEO of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
Welcome back to the Closing Bell. Today is National Frozen it's Frozen Yogurt Day, and Yogurtland is celebrating the day by giving away free yogurt and toppings from 4 to 7 p.m. at its Bakersfield store location at 10930 Stockdale Highway. So why don't you go treat yourself to something sweet on this kind of dreary day out there? And better yet, why don't you treat the person in line behind you? The Valley Green team of the Greater Stockton Chamber of Commerce and the Cal EPA are hosting a Business Academy for Regulatory Compliance. That's taking place Tuesday, February 11th from 9 to 1 at the Woodward Park Regional Library in Fresno. During the event, you'll learn the latest regulations, incentives, and best practices for compliance with EPA regulations. The event is free to attend. However, they are asking that you register at greenteamsanjoaquin.com/registration-form.A as in Sam, P as in Paul, X as in X-ray. The Downtown Business Association here in Bakersfield is hosting its annual State of the Downtown Breakfast Thursday, February 13th from 7:30 to 9 at the Marriott Hotel at the Convention Center. The cost is $40 for DBA members, $50 for non-members, and you must RSVP by this Friday, February 7th. For more information, you can call the DBA at 661-325-5892. The Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce has a number of upcoming events and activities. For those, I'm going to send it over to Lauren Smoot, our Manager of Marketing and Communications at the News Desk. What do you have, Lauren?
I have a couple events coming up at the Chamber. One is our Financial Resources and Access to Capital for Business seminar, happening Tuesday, February 11th at 11:30 a.m. It's going to be at the Chamber, and this seminar is going to host Kelly Bearden, Small Business Development Center. Bearden's going to discuss local resources as well as what types of funding banks and other lending organizations provide. He's also going to provide insight into local progress being made to allow local businesses more access to capital, as well as review topics such as SBA lending to peer-to-peer and internet direct lending for small businesses. This seminar is $30 for chamber members, $60 for non-members. Lunch will be provided, and to register, just go ahead and give the chamber a call or visit bakersfieldchamber.org online. We also have another former seminar coming up Tuesday, February 18th, dealing with nuisance neighbors for businesses. Your neighbors are in a unique position to make or break your business. From excess noise and traffic to loitering that scares off your customers, we have a seminar for you. Attorney Christopher Hagan with Clifford & Brown and Cheryl Miller, who's a certified property manager and president of Stockdale Property Management, will discuss tenant rights under a lease and provide tips and guidance in dealing with nuisance neighbors when the lease is not enough. This again is $30 for chamber members, $60 for non-members. Box lunch will be provided, again, Tuesday, February 18th, 11:30 a.m. at the chamber. We also have coming up a business cleanup. Show some love to Bakersfield and your business. So with us, we have a call-in today, Jennifer Pitcher, who is the chair of Keep Bakersfield Beautiful Anti-Litter Subcommittee. Hi, Jennifer, are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So you and I both were part of the making of this project through Vision 2020 Image Committee. But what makes this project so unique and meaningful is its ties into the Keep Bakersfield Beautiful Anti-Litter Committee and also some feedback the Chamber received from businesses about litter being something that hurts their business. So what is this event going to look like?
It's just a day where we're trying to get businesses to get their employees out, kind of throughout town, and you'll go out in front of your building or a parking lot or wherever you choose and kind of pick up litter for however long that you would like, and to just show the love for Bakersfield and to help curb our litter problem here.
Right, so businesses can show love back to their business by cleaning it up a little bit. So this is on Friday, February 14th, and how do businesses get involved?
It's really, businesses can can determine, when they want to do it, where they want to do it, and how they want to do it. So all you have to do is call Keep Bakersfield Beautiful, and we will supply your team with bags and gloves. And we have a sheet that we would like to be turned back in, just so we know how many volunteers went out and how long they volunteered and how many bags of trash were picked up. And those all count towards our Great American Cleanup numbers. So they just call KBB at 395-3539 and just sign up, and we can get the supplies to you.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us this morning, Jennifer. Just want to remind businesses to go ahead and call Keep Bakersfield Beautiful. Jennifer or Jessica Felix can help you. Jessica Felix can be reached at jfelix. And what's the ending, Jennifer?
jfelix@bakersfieldcity.us.
Perfect. So thank you for meeting or talking with us this morning. And I'm going to toss it back over to our host, Cindy Pollard.
Thanks, Lauren. The Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce is now accepting applications for its 2014 Beautiful Bakersfield Awards. The awards recognize individuals and organizations who have made a contribution to enhancing the quality of life here in Bakersfield over the last year. So that's in 2013. Joining me in the studio now is Casey Kanak. Casey is actually with United Way on a full-time basis, but she happens to be the chair of our Beautiful Bakersfield committee. Good morning, Casey.
Good morning, Cindy.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you've been involved with Beautiful Bakersfield for quite some time. What do you enjoy most about that program?
I enjoy working with the people that come together on this committee to celebrate those in our community, to keep our community, Bakersfield, beautiful.
Terrific. Now, the nominations are going to be open through the middle of March. What are some of the categories for which awards are given? Tell me about some of those.
Our categories, active adults. This year we've split up our performing arts from our visual arts, which is something new we haven't done before. So I'm really excited about that. So we have also our humanitarian, environmental, All-American City Tradition. So it's really exciting this year.
Fantastic. So in terms of those categories, I know you said you broke out the visual from the performing arts. What is it that you're looking at there?
Well, performing arts, singing, dancing, theatrical, visual arts, paintings, sculptures, anything that has to do with a visual art.
Okay.
So.
And you recognize individuals or organizations in 13 categories or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there have just been some incredible projects over the last several years that have been recognized.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
There have.
Now, I believe you were at last year's Beautiful Bakersfield Awards event, and I was there as well. I mean, and it was just the most incredibly inspirational event. What was your take on it?
I enjoyed it very much. It's really neat to be a part of a committee that recognizes these individuals that put so much of their time into our community, and to recognize them for what they do. And to them, it's not that big of a deal, but from somebody who doesn't know how to do a visual art or who doesn't know how to do architecture, and to see the beauty that they put into our community is just amazing to me.
It really is. It really is. Now, if someone would like to nominate themselves or someone else for an award, how can they get an application?
They can go online to the Bakersfield Chamber website and download it, or they can come in and pick one up at the chamber.
Terrific. They're also going to be, we're going to be putting it in our newsletter this month. So for those of you who are chamber members who get the newsletter, look for it there. And if you want to go online, it is bakersfieldchamber.org. Thanks, Casey, very much.
Thanks for having me, Cindy.
Certainly, you know of someone who has made a meaningful contribution to improving the quality of life here in Bakersfield in 2013. So why don't you tell Casey and her committee about it by submitting a nomination form. As Casey mentioned, the forms are going to be available online at the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. They're going to be available at the front counter. So if you happen to be in the downtown area, you want to stop by our offices at 1725 I Street, you can pick up an application there, or you can pull it out of the Metro newsletter if you happen to be a member of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. You've been watching Strictly Business. I'm Cindy Pollard with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. We would like to hear from you. What are you interested in finding out more about? Or if you have some suggestions or feedback on how we can make this show better for you, send those to us at production@bakersfieldchamber.org. We'll be right back here next Monday at 10 a.m. I'm Cindy Pollard with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. You have been watching Strictly Business.